I moved to a quiet Appalachian neighborhood a few weeks ago. I'm 32 and I thought a change would help me after some tough times. The rustic charm of the area drew me in. I found a small log cabin built in the 1800s. It seemed like a peaceful place to start over. I was excited but a bit nervous too. The first few nights were calm. I set up my things and felt like I could finally relax. But on my second night, I woke up to a sound outside. It was a rhythmic tapping against my window. I figured it was just branches swaying in the wind. It seemed normal enough. I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep. The next night, I woke up again. The tapping was back, just like before. But something felt off. I noticed shadows moving past my windows. Sometimes I heard laughter, but it felt distant, like it was coming from the woods. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was kids playing. Then I found strange symbols carved into the porch posts. They looked old and worn. The chill that ran down my back had me questioning my own mind. I kept asking myself if I was imagining things. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Each night, the tapping grew more persistent. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks after all the stress I'd been through. I started hearing whispers, and it felt like someone, or something, was watching me. I couldn't shake that feeling. On the third night, everything changed. I lay in bed, heart pounding, listening. The sounds were so close. At one point, I thought I heard a voice calling my name. I got up, hesitating, but I had to see what was going on. I opened the door and stepped outside. The moon was bright, but everything felt eerily quiet. Then I saw it. A figure darting away into the trees. I chased after it, but it vanished like smoke. My heart raced. I turned and ran inside, locking the door behind me. I didn't know what to believe. The next day, I tried to talk to the neighbors about what I saw. They changed the subject quickly or gave me strange looks. I felt more alone. Was it folklore? Was I dreaming? I still heard the tapping at night. The symbols haunted me. I felt like I had to decide soon, stay or leave. I felt trapped in this place, surrounded by mysteries. I thought about the whispers. They lingered in my mind. Then one night, it happened again. I heard a soft voice call my name outside the window. I froze. Fear gripped me. I turned slowly to look. Nobody was there. My heart sank as I realized I was still very much alone in this cabin full of whispers and shadows. I didn't know if I could stay another night. The next day, I needed to distract myself. I decided to hike the trails nearby, maybe clear my head. The woods looked inviting, but I still felt a weight hanging over me. I grabbed my backpack and set off, hoping the fresh air would settle my nerves. As I walked deeper into the forest, I noticed it was unusually quiet. There were no birds singing, no rustling leaves. Just silence. I tried to push the feeling of unease aside, focusing instead on the winding path ahead. Eventually, I stumbled upon a small clearing. It seemed peaceful, but something about it felt off. In the middle of the clearing, I found a pile of stones arranged in a strange pattern. My heart raced as I approached. They looked deliberate, almost like a shrine. I dropped my bag and started to examine them closely. Each stone had a different symbol carved into it. I recognized a few from what I had seen on my porch. A chill ran down my spine. I stepped back, scanning the area around me. That's when I heard it. The low, soft whispering that had haunted me at night filled the air. It echoed through the trees, but I couldn't make out any words. Panicking, I turned to leave. But as I did, I saw something move in the corner of my eye. I whipped my head around and spotted a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, obscured by the trees. It was hard to tell if it was a person or just a trick of the light. My instincts screamed for me to run, but I was frozen in place. Then, unexpectedly, the figure stepped forward. A woman, her hair wild and untamed, wearing clothes that looked like they belonged to another time. Her eyes locked onto mine, piercing and knowing. "Leave this place," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that made my chest tighten. "The woods do not forget." Before I could respond, she turned and disappeared into the shadows, as quickly as she had appeared. My heart raced. Everything felt surreal. I stumbled back toward the path, not daring to look back again. When I reached my cabin, I locked the door and sat on the floor, trying to process what had just happened. Why did she warn me? Who was she, and what did she mean by the woods not forgetting? That night, the tapping started earlier than usual. It was relentless, more persistent than it had ever been. I could barely breathe. I grabbed a flashlight, flicking it on and off in hopes of scaring away whatever was out there. Suddenly, I heard crashing sounds outside, as if something was flinging itself against the cabin. Panic surged through me. Had I disturbed something? Should I have left when I had the chance? There was a roar, deep and guttural, followed by silence. I held my breath, straining to listen. The tapping had stopped, but a new sound filled the void, rustling against the window. I raised the flashlight, but the beam trembled in my hand. Then everything went dark. The power must have gone out. I felt trapped, surrounded by shadows that seemed to breathe. I scrambled for my phone, its light a small flicker in the abyss. As I illuminated my surroundings, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The symbols from the porch were now drawn on the walls inside. Someone, or something, had been in my home. I fought to catch my breath as the cold light from my phone illuminated the symbols on the walls. They were scrawled in a hasty, frantic manner, as if they had been etched by clawing fingers. My mind raced. Had I really disturbed something? I could barely keep my thoughts straight. I stumbled to my feet, keeping the light steady. The shadows in the corners of the room felt alive, watching me. I wanted to scream, to run out of the cabin and never look back, but I had to know what was happening. Just then, I heard a faint whisper. "Find us." It was faint, almost tender, yet it sent a tremor down my spine. I pushed against the wall, scanning for an escape route. The whisper came again, this time clearer. "Find us." It was laced with urgency, a plea that felt as old as the forest itself. I flicked the flashlight to the window, illuminating the outside. Nothing stirred in the darkness. The wood creaked beneath me as I edged toward the door. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting for my next move. Before I could think too much about it, I grabbed my jacket and bolted outside. The chill in the air hit me hard, but I didn't stop. I had to find out who or what was in the woods. The clearing came back to mind, the stones, the woman. I retraced my steps, my heart pounding with dread. As I approached the site, the world around me felt different. The trees loomed like silent giants, their branches twisting against the night sky. The whispers grew louder. I could almost touch them in the cold air. And then I saw it. The pile of stones was gone. In its place was a deep, dark hole in the ground. It looked like a small well, but there was no water, just a darkness that seemed to pull me in. "Find us!" The voice called again, louder now, echoing from somewhere deep within the darkness. I felt the air shift, swirling around me as if urging me closer. I felt the pull of curiosity battling against my instinct to run. Cautiously, I knelt down to peer inside the shadowy abyss. The flashlight beam barely penetrated the void. Just as I leaned in closer, the ground beneath me shifted. I stumbled backward, heart racing, expecting something to lunge out. But nothing came. The whispers ceased, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. I felt exposed and vulnerable. I scanned the area around me, searching for any sign of the woman or anyone else. That's when I noticed a small object nestled in the grass nearby. Hesitantly, I approached. It was a necklace, shimmering with intricate symbols that looked eerily familiar. My mind flashed to the ones on my porch and the swirling marks on my cabin walls. Then it hit me, a realization that sent chills down my spine. This necklace belonged to the woman. Had she left it as a sign, or was it a warning? I heard a rustling behind me and spun around, breath hitching in my throat. The woods held their breath again, but this time I sensed a presence, one that felt closer. I wasn't alone. and then I saw something emerge from the trees, moving toward me. The figure stepped into the faint light of my flashlight, and I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. She was familiar. The woman from my dreams. Her features distorted by the shadows. Her hair hung tangled and wild, and her eyes seemed to reflect the darkness around us. "Help me," she rasped, barely audible over the rustling leaves. It was a question and a command, a mix of desperation and hope. I took a tentative step back, my instincts screaming at me to run, but her gaze held me captive. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. "Find us," she repeated, but this time it sounded more like a warning than a plea. "You have to find us before it's too late." I glanced at the hole behind me. Was that what she meant? The darkness seemed to shift, cupping its hands around the words. I hesitated, torn between the need to flee and the desperate curiosity that had pushed me into the woods in the first place. I turned back toward her, but she was gone, swallowed by the shadows. The rustling intensified. It felt like the forest itself was alive, a creature stirring from its slumber. "No, no, no," I muttered to myself, forcing my feet to move. I had to get back to the cabin. There was something in the air, an energy that gnawed at my senses, urging me to leave. But as I started to walk away, I caught something glinting in the dirt. Bending down, I picked up another object. This time it was a small mirror, its surface cracked and smudged but still reflecting the glimmer of the night sky. A sudden chill shot down my spine. I could see faint outlines in the mirror, shapes moving just outside my range of sight. I turned around, and there they were again, shadows just beyond the trees, lurking. They seemed to flit in and out of existence, faces popping into view only to vanish when I focused on them. My breath quickened. I took a step back, lifting the flashlight to illuminate the area fully. The shadows scattered, but I could still feel their presence surrounding me. Panic surged within me. What was this place? "Help us!" The voice echoed again, but it sounded different now. It was no longer the woman's voice, it was deeper, almost guttural. The darkness around me pulsed with energy, drawing me in toward the hole once more. I felt my knees weaken, the gravity of whatever force was at play tethering me. "No, I won't go down there," I shouted, my words swallowed in the stillness. Then everything went dark. The flashlight flickered and I felt intense cold wrap around me. I stumbled, my foot slipping on the damp earth, and before I could brace myself, I fell forward into the hole. The ground fell away, and an overwhelming silence enveloped me. I gasped but couldn't breathe, the darkness closing in as everything vanished from view. I hit the ground with a thud, and the air rushed from my lungs. The darkness was suffocating. I lay there trying to catch my breath, my mind racing. What just happened? As my eyes adjusted, I detected a faint glimmer of light. It was far away, pulsating like a star in a vast empty sky. Clumsily, I pushed myself to my feet, feeling the damp earth beneath me. I took a cautious step forward, the cold seeping through my clothes. I forced myself to move toward the light, driven by a mixture of fear and an urge to uncover whatever lay ahead. Each step echoed in the silence like a drumbeat in my chest. Shadows clung to the walls, darting away as I approached. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When the light came into view, I gasped. It was a small clearing, illuminated by the remnants of a flickering fire. Surrounding the fire were strange objects, twisted pieces of metal, jars filled with murky liquids and what looked like pages torn from a book. I stepped closer, drawn in by curiosity. That's when I saw it. A figure crouched by the fire. My heart dropped. It was a man, disheveled and hunched over the flames. His wild eyes darted up at me, and for a moment we stared at each other in shock. "Who are you?" I stumbled over the words. Part of me wanted to run, but the part that was curious held me in place. "Someone who was lost," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Just like you." "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, each word feeling heavy. He hesitated, glancing around us. "You shouldn't be here. It's dangerous." His warning sent chills down my spine. "I saw a woman. She told me to find you." His expression changed, as though a shadow passed over his face. "The woman? You shouldn't listen to her." Panic rose again. I didn't understand. "Why? What happened to her?" He looked away, his gaze shifting back to the fire. "She's trapped, just like many others." I took a step closer, my mind racing. "Trapped? What do you mean?" "The darkness pulls at those who wander too far. It uses them, twists them into shadows." He paused, as if deciding whether to share more. "I tried to help her, tried to resist, but it's powerful. The way it holds on to you. It feels alive." A rush of urgency filled me. I had to get out, but my instinct told me I couldn't leave without trying to help. "How do we save her?" He frowned, flicking his gaze to the shadows creeping closer. "You can't. Not without paying a price." Before I could question him further, the shadows lunged from the trees, swirling around us. I turned, feeling their cold silhouettes brush against my skin. "What do we do?" I shouted. "Run!" he yelled, rising to his feet. Then, just as suddenly as they had come, the shadows retreated. It left me breathless. The fire flickered in the silence, and the man was gone. I was alone again, grips of fear tightening around me. There was something else, an intoxicating hum in the air, and it called to me. But I was done playing its game. Just then, I noticed a narrow path leading away from the clearing. My mind screamed at me to take it, but something tugged at my stomach. A sense that whatever awaited on that path would be far worse than what I had just faced. What had I truly stumbled into? I thought about the woman's voice resonating in my memory. Suddenly, the urgency to find her morphed into something darker. I needed answers. But at what cost? The only thing I knew for sure was that I had to decide fast. I could either stay or follow that path. The shadows were watching, and they wouldn't wait much longer. The decision came quickly. I could almost feel the shadows pressing against my back, urging me to move. I stepped onto the path, hoping it would lead me away from whatever dark force lurked behind. The cold night air clung to me as I ventured deeper into the trees. The path twisted and turned, and with every step, my heart raced a little faster. I could hear whispers, echoing close but just out of reach. Anxiety crept in. Shadows with no form slid between the trees. Then I spotted something ahead. A flicker at the edge of my vision. I slowed, squinting into the darkness. It looked like a small, jagged structure. An old cabin. As I approached, unease washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I pushed the door open, the wood creaking in protest. Inside, the air was stale and sour. Dust hung in the dim light, particles swirling around like suspended memories. The room held remnants of a life once lived. Old furniture lay covered in a thick layer of dust, and broken glass crunched underfoot. But what caught my eye was a table at the back. Stacked haphazardly were items I recognized from the clearing. Torn pages, odd metal pieces, even a heart-shaped locket glimmering faintly as if it held a secret inside. I picked up the locket, twisting it between my fingers. There was something familiar about it, but nothing I could place. A sudden crash outside startled me. I dropped the locket, and it hit the floor with a dull thud. My heart pounded as I rushed to the window. Outside, the shadows were moving again. They flickered in and out of sight, like a performance playing out just for me. Then something caught my eye further down the path. A silhouette, tall and elongated, drifted into view. The figure paused, staring directly at me as though it knew I was watching. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just any figure. It was the woman from my memory, the one who had called me here. But her face was obscured, hidden beneath a veil of darkness. "Help me." Her voice floated through the air, echoing in my mind. I stepped back, unsure if she was a savior or a trap. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trembling. She pointed toward the cabin as more shadows closed in, their intentions clearer, darker. "You must find the truth," she urged, and in that moment, I understood. The answers I sought might lie within the remnants around me. But at what cost? I froze, the weight of that question heavy in the room. The shadows surged, whispering warnings that clawed at my resolve. I had to decide. Uncover the truth, or turn back and face the darkness behind me. My hand trembled as I reached for the locket on the floor. In that single moment, the shadows lurched close, their whispers growing into a deafening scream. I snatched the locket, feeling a pulse of warmth surge through me. But the door slammed shut, and the room went dark. Suddenly I was no longer alone. Someone or something was in the cabin with me. I stood frozen, locket clutched tightly in my fist. My eyes darted around the cabin, desperate to find a target for my rising panic. The darkness felt alive, swirling with silent intent. I could hear my own breath, shallow and quick, as I strained to listen. Then I heard it, a soft shuffling behind me. The sound was muffled but unmistakable. Cold sweat trickled down my back. I turned slowly, trying to keep my movements silent, cautious. The shadows at the edges of the room seemed to thicken. I squinted, my eyes searching for the shape that had crept inside. And then I saw them, a pair of glowing eyes reflecting back at me from the corner, watching, waiting. My pulse quickened. "Who's there?" The words slipped out, trembling. I felt ridiculous for asking when it was clear that whatever presence filled the cabin was far from friendly. The eyes shifted, moving toward me with a slow, deliberate pace. A shadowy figure began to materialize from the darkness. It was tall, twisted, its arms unnaturally long. The shape seemed to flicker as if it was unsure of its own form, like smoke caught in a wind draft. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaking but louder than before. The locket, still warm in my hand, felt like my only link to the light. "Remember," it croaked, the voice raspy and hollow, echoing through the air like an old record scratch. "Remember the past." The figure beckoned with a bony finger, but I took a step back instead. My heart raced, and I felt a surge of defiance. "I don't want to remember anything. I just want to leave." My plea sounded weak even to my ears. The shadow laughed, a chilling sound that reverberated through the cabin. "You can't leave. Not until you know." Suddenly the temperature dropped. My breath clouded in front of me. The dust began to swirl as if caught in a sudden gust, and the room dimmed further. My mind raced. What truth did this creature want me to uncover? I thought of the locket, its strange warmth. Was it a key or a trap? Before I could decide, the cabin's door suddenly swung open with a loud bang, flooding the room with moonlight. I squinted, heart pounding, as the light pushed back the darkness momentarily. The figure vanished, retreating into the shadows, leaving only the echo of its laughter lingering in the air. "Go back," it whispered, barely audible as the door swung shut again, trapping me in darkness. With shaking hands, I rushed to the open door, desperate to escape. But as I reached to pull it open, I realized the doorknob felt cold. I twisted it, but it wouldn't budge. A rush of dread flooded over me. The figure was right. I wasn't allowed to leave yet. That's when I saw it. A bright flash caught my eye, reflecting off something on the floor. I bent down, knowing I had to focus, knowing I needed answers. But as I reached for the light, a new realization struck me. I was no longer just a witness. I was a part of whatever story this cabin held. And the shadows were stirring again. I crouched low, heart racing as I grasped the object that glimmered against the dusty floor. It was a small mirror, its surface cracked but still reflecting the faint light filtering through the window. A shiver ran down my spine as I turned it cautiously, half expecting something to leap out at me. Suddenly, I heard the low growl again, that same visceral noise echoing from the shadows. I froze, staring into the darkness, mirror held tightly in my hand. I was torn between curiosity and terror. I hadn't even taken notice of where the growl had come from. "Not just memories," the shadow had said. You need to face the truth. But what truth? Was the mirror meant to show me something? Before I could ponder further, the temperature dropped again. The frosty air rolled through the room like an unwelcome tidal wave. I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. I could see my breath now, rising in ghostly puffs. No, this wasn't happening. I couldn't let it. I shot to my feet, the mirror clattering to the floor, but I grabbed it again. As I focused on the cracked surface, I could see shadows flickering in the reflection. Not my own, but other figures. They were swirling, their faces obscured. My breath caught in my throat. I knew I was about to unearth something I wasn't ready for. "Show me," I whispered, my voice trembling more than I had intended. Nothing. I glared at my reflection, willing it to respond. Then, with a flicker of hope, I commanded, "Show me the truth." Suddenly the air shifted. The dark room around me began to blur, and a rush of cold air forced me to close my eyes. I felt a pull, as if I was being drawn into the mirror itself. The shadows in its depths writhed and twisted, taking the shape of a scene I didn't recognize at first. As I blinked, I found myself standing in the same cabin, but it was bright and alive. The walls were painted with vibrant colors, and the sunlight poured in through the window. I could hear laughter. A group of people huddled close, sharing stories, their faces filled with joy. But then I noticed the details, the flickering shadows darting around them, whispering. I reached for the figures in the mirror, heart pounding with urgency. "Who are you?" I called out, but my voice seemed just a whisper in the reverberating echoes of the past. The scene shifted again, revealing a darker side. The laughter faded as the group became frantic, looking around in fear. I saw the twisted figure emerge once more, its eyes glowing red. The joy vanished, replaced by chaos and despair. Then everything went dark, and I was back in the cabin, breathless and disoriented. The mirror lay shattered at my feet, fragments glimmering like stars. A shriek pierced the air, sharp and desperate. I staggered back as shadows bounced off the walls, forming shapes that rushed towards me. I felt trapped, backs against the invisible wall of fear that the cabin had erected around me. "No!" I shouted, scrambling towards the door once more. But just as I reached for the knob, I heard it again, the chilling laughter of the shadow. "You need to remember who you are," it hissed. Panic surged through me. It wasn't just a story, it was my story. I had to fight back. I turned to face the gathering darkness. "I will remember," I shouted, though I wasn't sure what that would mean for me. And then the walls shook, revealing a door behind the shadow, one I hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar, calling me with a promise of escape and danger intertwined. I took a deep breath. The only way to understand this was to go through it. I moved towards the door, the shadows swirling hungrily around me, and stepped inside. I stepped through the door and felt a rush of air. Different. Electric. It was darker on this side. I squinted, trying to make sense of my surroundings. The faint outline of walls materialized, but instead of the old cabin, I was in a narrow corridor. Faded wallpaper lined the edges, peeling in places like the memories I was trying to piece together. I cautiously moved forward. My pulse thudded loudly in my ears. The laughter from before hung in the air, but it was distant now, fading like a half-remembered dream. Deep shadows pooled at the far end of the hall, and every instinct screamed for me to turn back. But I had to push through. I needed answers, and the laughter felt like a clue. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing eerily. It felt ridiculous to ask, but I had to try. "Is anyone there?" A door swung open farther down the hallway, creaking on rusted hinges. I hesitated, unsure if I should go toward it, but something pulled at me. Curiosity, or maybe desperation. I moved toward the door, and the air thickened, charged with tension. As I reached the threshold, a figure stepped into the light. It was a woman, her eyes wide and wild, hair cascading around her like a dark wave. "You shouldn't be here," she urged, her voice a frantic whisper. You have to leave. My heart raced. Who are you? What do you mean? Why am I here? The questions rushed out of me, tumbling over themselves. The woman glanced over her shoulder, fear etched on her face. It's coming, she hissed, then took a step back, her gaze darting as if she sensed something lurking. What's coming? I pressed, but she remained silent, lips pressed tightly together. Then, in a flash, shadows surged from the corridor's end, swirling with purpose, forming shapes that seemed to dance. I stumbled backward, realizing the growing darkness wasn't just a trick of my mind. It was real, and it was alive. I had one chance to escape. What do I need to do? I yelled, heightening my voice above the howling wind of the shadows. The woman flicked her eyes to my reflection in a nearby mirror. Another fragment, unbroken but murky. You have to confront the truth, she shouted back, her voice rising as panic took hold. Before I could ask what she meant, the shadows lunged forward, an unseen force driving them. I turned, sprinting down the corridor, frantic steps echoing against the walls. The air grew colder, and the sensation of being hunted crept closer. Behind me, the woman's screams melted into the cacophony, muddled by the rushing shadows. I ducked beneath a heavy beam, hoping to avoid whatever evil loomed just behind me. Then something caught my foot, sending me crashing to the ground. I scrambled to my knees, breathless and trembling. That's when I saw it. A small box in the dust, ornate and shimmering. Something inside it glowed faintly, illuminating my face. I reached for it, heart pounding with uncertainty. The moment my fingers brushed against the cold metal, everything went still. In the heavy silence, I felt a presence, cold and foreboding. I knew I was no longer alone. And then it whispered, "You can't escape your past." I yanked the box open, clenching my teeth as I braced for whatever fate awaited me. Inside lay a collection of old trinkets, objects that seemed tied to the eerie tales I had whispered under my breath since arriving in this cursed place. A faded photograph caught my eye, crinkled and dust-covered. I carefully lifted it. The image of a family. Their faces familiar yet foreign, standing outside a cabin that looked strikingly like mine. The shadows surged again, moving ferociously towards me, pushing the air from my lungs. My pulse raced in rhythm with the darkness, urging me to move. I tucked the photo into my jacket and grabbed the other items, a rusted key, a small pendant, and bolted back into the corridor, feeling the weight of their histories pressing down on me. Find the truth, the woman's voice echoed in my mind. My heart screamed with the urgency to confront whatever lay ahead. Every ounce of instinct told me to run, to hide, but dread anchored me in place. I found myself drawn back to the dark corridor where the shadows swirled, whispering secrets and sorrows. Summoning what little courage I had, I pressed forward, determined to understand the depths of this haunting legacy. Just as I approached the corridor's end, a thick fog enveloped me, tinged with the sweet decay of forgotten things. Memories began to flicker around me, flashes of laughter, warmth evaporating into desperation. I felt a deep sorrow, an absence of something vital. I blinked hard, trying to focus on faces moving through the haze, their eyes filled with longing, their forms like smoke dissipating in an autumn breeze. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the fog, familiar yet distorted. It was the woman once more, but she looked different, paler, with shadows swirling like a shroud around her. "Help us," she cried, her voice breaking. "You must remember." Barely pausing, I rushed forward, holding the photograph out towards her. "I saw them. Who are they?" I could feel the tremor in my own voice and the weight of unavoidable truth just ahead. "They're your family, the ones who were trapped," she said. "You must make a choice." Before I could ask what she meant, the shadows rushed at me, cacophonous and hungry. The whispers crescendoed until they became a roar. The cold wrapped itself around my heart, squeezing until I thought I could barely breathe. "Your past is tethered to this place," the woman breathed, her figure trembling with resolve. "You can either confront the shadows or allow them to consume you too." Taking a shaky breath, I tightened my grip on the key and pendant, feeling their warmth amidst the encroaching chill. How do I confront them? The void quaked. Find the door, the one that hides the truth. The shadows twisted violently, converging on her. I watched in horror as they consumed her, her cry echoing off the walls, the remnants of her anguish a ghostly reminder. I had to move. I dashed through the shadows, heart racing as I felt the shadows snapping at my heels. I spotted an old door carved with intricate designs at the corridor's end, hearing murmurs rising at its threshold, beckoning me. With the key in trembling hands, I faced the door and plunged it into the lock. It turned with a shuddering creak, unleashing a gust of wind that swept through the corridor. I felt alive with purpose, even as shadows writhed in anger behind me. I pushed the door open, bracing myself for the confrontation. An unforgiving darkness met me, and I stepped inside despite the tendrils of fear coiling around my ankles. The air felt charged with energy, thick and unyielding. In the center, a gathering of shapes flitted through the gloom, specters or vivid memories. I couldn't tell. I took a breath and held up the photograph, every ounce of courage coursing through me. "You must remember me," I called out, my voice resonating in the stillness. Suddenly, the laughter erupted once more, echoing with a warmth that felt like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. As I stood my ground, the shadows flickered, shapes coalescing before me. Faces emerged. My family. Their expressions mixed with sorrow and longing, illuminated against a canvas of twilight. "Help us," they echoed in unison, their voices weaving a haunting melody that filled the air. "What do you need?" I begged, the tears spilling as I gazed at their familiar eyes. With desperate longing, they pointed toward the darkness swirling around us. "Release us from this curse. Help us find peace." As the shadows coalesced to shroud me, I realized I was no longer a mere spectator of this haunting. I was entwined within it, the fate of my family intertwined with mine. The weight of the past pressed on my heart, and I felt the shadows draw closer, feeding on my uncertainty. In that moment, clarity washed over me. I remembered the warmth of affection, the laughter we had shared, a connection too powerful to sever. I gripped the pendant and key tightly, feeling their energy crackle to life in my palm. "Until I find peace for you, I cannot be free," I declared, tears streaming down my face. "I will break this curse." As I held out the pendant, the light coursed through my body, flooding the space with warmth. I felt the shadows retreat and the faces began to smile, hope reflecting back at me. But then, just as suddenly, the shadows surged with renewed ferocity, their power threatening to engulf me. "No," I cried, gripping the pendant with all my strength. The shadows encircled me but could not breach the light emanating from the pendant. In a final surge, I pulled my memories into focus, the echoes of laughter, the love that bound us together. And just as the shadows lunged for their revenge, I felt the sharp, exhilarating burst of clarity. I faced their darkness with my light. "I set you free," I shouted. The cabin shook as the energy surged, the shadows swirling violently before unraveling, untethering from the sorrow and pain. The air lightened, and with it, so did the weight pressing upon me. I felt as though I was lifting, the remnants of the past swirling into fragments of light before dissipating into the air. In the sudden silence, I blinked, and when my eyes opened fully, the cabin stood empty. No shadows, no whispers, only beams of golden light streaming through the windows. But what had I really set free? As I stepped outside, I threw one last glance back into the now peaceful cabin. The past mingled with uncertain echoes of existence. I stepped away, uncertainty settling in, wondering what remnants of that darkness still lingered in the woods. I still couldn't shake the feeling that they watched from the trees, haunting but unchanged. I turned toward the sun-dappled path ahead, heart heavy with unanswered questions of what had remained. What still awaited me in this forgotten corner of the world? Would the shadows ever truly leave me? I didn't know. What I did know was that in stepping away from the cabin, I had stepped into a new chapter. A journey still unwritten, a past demanding reckoning but a future still tantalizingly ambiguous. I moved forward, unsure but resolute, feeling the remnants of warmth entwined with uncertainty on my journey ahead.